Okay. So tonight we're going to start a little bit more of a jump, but we're going to be creating a lidded container that will house some sort of object. Totally up to you. We're going to put some hardware in that from the McMaster-Carr extension on Fusion, which is really just a cool place to find specific hardware. Doesn't have to be specific, but know that that's a place where if you were making something and you wanted some specific hardware, being, screws, nuts, bolts, that sort of thing, you could find it there. And well, depending on what it is, you could either buy a couple of them or like 50 screws, which is actually really helpful. But in this case, just for reference. The final thing is, well, this container will actually move. I'm going to show you how to use the joint tool. That means most cases it's probably going to open and close like a clamshell, but it could be like a lifting container, something like that, something to that effect. So let me hop over to Fusion. I'll show you what we're talking about, and then we're going to do a walkthrough. So flipping over to Fusion, and let me hide these sketches real quick. This is what I'm talking about. Basically, made a little container. It has to house an object. It has to move, and it has to have some kind of features on top. In this case, I put a text on there. It says, my little toy box. Open up. Well, there's nothing inside because I forgot to drop a model in there. But this is essentially what you'll be making. You can actually open and close this in the program. You can print this as two separate objects, or you could open it, 180 degrees, and actually you can print it as one solid thing. We're going to also add in, let me close the top and bottom, hardware. So a little threaded rod in this case, and a couple of acorn nuts. Let me switch over to appearance view. And these are just these are just the default steel colorings, but you will need to be adding some color to this, or color and or appearance. And frankly, that could be anything. Like right now, I think that's like palladium top and a plastic bottom, because I don't know, juxtaposition. Anyway, very simple at its core, obviously with some details. The other detail you really will need is, well, it's not just a hinge because I put the joint tool in. I modeled in a very simple hinge. And in this case, let me switch back over to auto color. Just a three-point barrel hinge. Very basic hinge. We're not expecting some kind of overly mechanical butterfly hinge situation stuff. You want to go for that? More power to you. This is basically a cylinder, or this is basically a circle and a couple of triangles extruded in different directions. It's actually very simple. You can make this as complex as you like. You can make multiple points, but in this case, just a simple little 3-point hinge works perfectly well. We want to add the hardware, and a lot of the stuff is kind of estimation because I'm not expecting some sort of, or rather, we're not going to also thread the insides or anything like that. The hardware is locked together. I just put a rigid hinge or a rigid joint on that, so it's not like that moves with it. When I open and close, you can see that the hardware clips through the model. That's okay in this case. It's much more about learning how to place these parts and how these parts function. So all in all, it's pretty simple. What we'll also go over is adding an object in there. If you want to model something specific, that's fine. But I'm also going to show you how to import a model that you could find on a free file sharing website like Thingiverse or Printables or anywhere else. And you can pay for a model if you want, but those are free sharing sites. So let me switch over and we will, and we'll start in a moment. All righty, let's make a container. Back over to Fusion, super effing duper. All right, yeah, I know. All right, so first things first, as usual, especially when we start with these more complex models, save it. So starting in, I'm in the correct folder. So example, and calling it a towed missile box will make a lot more sense in a moment. All right, so standard or starting would be making a box, drawing out your dimensions, that sort of thing. But like I said, main thing is the whole design of this is that it has to hold a object. How you go about finding an object or modeling an object, it's up to you. You can model something, you can model a very basic thing. Like I said, and I keep referencing like, yeah, the cool rock I found at the beach. It could just be like kind of like a little oval or something like that. But maybe you have something a little more specific in mind. Maybe you wanted to try your hand at finding a model online. All right. Well, let's switch over to browser and look at that. So you got a couple of quick options. The more popular ones are things like printables.com or Thingiverse.com. Printables is basically the new version of Thingiverse. They're both two file sharing websites. They're both basically the same, except that Thingiverse just has a god awful search engine. It is genuinely terrible, and it's only gotten worse over the years. And Printables is a lot of people have migrated most of those models over. So look through there. You can find whatever you like. There's just so many things. I found a quick thing because I thought it'd be funny, and that's how my brain goes. I found a mistletoe. Instead of your toe missile or your mistletoe, I found a mistletoe. Makes me laugh. So you go to download all files, or just scroll down, and somebody remixed that from a toad, because why not? Find them things, download into your folder, super duper. Let's switch back over to Fusion. Yes. Sorry, I'm getting my errors. All right, we're back in Fusion, back in the model. And what you can do is to import that, you do not go to over here. You do not go to import and such because, well, one, it's not an option, and you don't want to upload because you're not uploading a new file. You're importing something in. You bring it in. So go all the way to the right of your toolbar to insert. Normally we'd use the canvas. In this case, we're going to insert a mesh, which is just below the insert McMaster-Carr component. We're going to get to that in a few. Go to insert mesh, find your downloaded thing. Now, Thingiverse downloads in a zipped file, so you'll have to expand that. Go to files, super duper, my mistletoe. Open up, bam, kind of big. But there we go. And it's a mesh because it's not a solid. You'll see all the little mesh triangles and such. That's basically all it is. So as I said, there's not a standard scale to this, but you might want to make this a reasonable size. So we're going to leave it as is. Import. It came in as a body here, just a general one. You can always put that in its own component if you prefer. So you can select that, new component, window, standard, drop it in. There we go. Now mistletoe is a completely separate object. So to get an idea of just how big this is, let's turn to a side, go to inspect, and I'm just going to pick a couple of points on this. How long is my toad missile? 10 millimeters. That's a teeny toad missile. Cool, that'll work. Realistically, might want to bump that up. So to do that, simply select the object, go to scale, uniform scale. It was only 10 millimeters, so let's make it 20. So scale factor of 2, meaning it's a multiples. So anything below 1 is percentiles. Above, or sorry, it's going to make it smaller. Above 1 is going to make it larger. Scale factor of 2, slightly bigger frog. Actually, it's twice as big even. So inspect again. From the nose to the tail fin, 20 millimeters. All right, that's reasonable. Okay. Just wanted to bump it up a little bit. Now, one quick thing to note. It is very important with this project to be working around the origin point. So you will probably want to move that up above the origin. Let me unhide it. Our standard center standard center point, the axes and planes, move it above that because you want to be working on the actual origin point. You can leave it right in the middle for now if you want. That's fine. But realistically, you either want to be above or below. Kind of depends on how you're going to orient your container. But it is very important to work with the origin point because a lot of stuff is going to be originating at that point with this model. So in this case, I'll just unhide it. It is centered right in there, so super good. Now, before I start anything, I'm going to do like I've done before. I want to build a bounding box, just a reference box. How big does this actually need to be? This is going to be a 3-dimensional box, so I'm going to need 2 separate sketches. In this case, I'm going to start one sketch. And if you have trouble selecting the actual plane, just hide your object for a moment. I'm going to select the XY plane, unhide my toad missile. Select a center point rectangle, but I also want to make sure that this is a construction line. You can always do that afterwards. Now, sometimes because this object is here, your cursor might want to snap to that object instead of to my origin point. Now, it's selecting the origin point, so we're good. But if you do have trouble, just temporarily hide that, select the origin point, then move outward. That's fine. So I'm just going to build it around this. Now, I can also move this frog forward a little bit, and I'll probably do that. So let's just make it kind of a little bit more even. Let's make it 20 millimeters by, it looks like 25. Sure, fine. Okay, that's cool. Great. Finish sketch. Now, I also want to give myself a reference to the side. Now, this isn't imperative that you do this, but if it helps you, make another one to the side. Again, press X or go over to the toolbox, construction line, center line, right in the middle box. Now, I did make this 25 millimeters long, so do that. And then you can just scale this up if you like. But like I said, you can always move this around a little bit. You don't necessarily need this side. It can just be a little bit helpful. In this case, it might actually be more problematic, but it might give you just a general reference size of how big you want to make this. Again, right now, this is only 25 by 20 millimeters. That's really tiny. It might be beneficial to actually make this a fair bit larger. So there we are. But scale is more of going to be important when we actually start making the general dimensions. So you can always change things around later. So let's just say for now, I'll make it 30 millimeters tall. I don't really need this side one, but sometimes just being able to see how large your container is going to be can just help you just get some general dimensions. Again, I could move let me move my frog down here, select that whole thing. Now move this. And the reason I'm going to move this, I just want this to be a little bit more evenly placed along my axis around my origin plane. So I'm just going to move it down a little bit. Again, I'm not making any changes aside from that's just going to help me model this, because in my head, I want to model this where it's a little bit even to where it's kind of more of half and half, same size of a lid and a container. If I wanted the container to be deeper and the lid more shallow, I could move this further down. That's really all that matters. And you can always do that afterwards too. It doesn't matter. In this case, I just want to help myself a little bit. So you're looking from the top. I can see my original containing box. That works. I probably should move it forward a little bit more. So I'll activate that, move from the center, and I'll just drag it forward a little bit. So it's just more of in the center of where my container will be. That's all. Again, not really making much of any changes. Now you'll see that two new options have come up at the very top right-hand bar. You'll see capture position and revert position. This refers to when you move like a major object in your modeling space in your file. It's helpful when you're actually repositioning things like my toad missile. What that refers to as capture position will now lock it in its new coordinates, or revert position will plop it back where it was. I want to lock it in its new coordinates. Capture position, that's all. So it's just kind of they're all just subjective reference points, so it's not that big a deal. All right, so I kind of have a little bit better idea of where this is going to go. Let me reactivate the whole project so my sketch lines are more apparent. Okay, cool. That's all. I might find that this needs to be a little bit taller, a little bit larger, that sort. And in point of fact, like I said, we were talking about like the vessels and such. That was more like 60 millimeters wide. That to make a 120 millimeter bowl. That's not really that big. That's kind of about 3 or 4. That's about 4 inches. So if this were going to be a reasonable size, I'd probably want to bump this up even more. And that's going to be really important when I pull in hardware. So in this case, I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let me select that again, scale it up again, and now each time you scale this, if you change it again, the scale factor is not from the original size. It's from the current size. So if I scale it up by 2 again, that's like scaling before by 4. 2 times 2. There you go. So it's kind of large. So maybe only like 1.5. That seems slightly more reasonable. All right. So now I can, of course, go back in my sketches. Let's edit that real quick. Looking down. Dang, if I edit that sketch, it's going to be this. Now, this is one of the problems with the whole time slider thing. You know what? It might be a bit more beneficial, because when I drew my sketch after it was initially scaled up, but before it was finally scaled up, I think what will be better, delete the one that I just did, go back, edit the original feature, and instead of by 2, we'll do, what's that, like 3.5? Sure. That's a little bit more reasonable. There we go. Now I can go, when I edit that sketch, I can change those dimensions. Looks like, I don't know, 40. Yeah, that's better. There we go. And I don't know, 35. Hey, that's decent. Looks like 40 is not quite large enough, so let's say 50. Cool, there we go. That's a reasonable size. So again, when I say with this project, it needs to be accurately sized, this is what I mean. In that, yeah, it needs to be big enough to actually house the thing. Cool. All right. We had to do a little bit of juggling to get the model about the size that I would want, or at least a reasonable size. I made my sketches a little bit larger. Again, I can readjust that other sketch. This one isn't nearly as important, but what was that, 45? No, I think I made it like 50. Sometimes it helps to write things down. All right, there we go. The side profile one is just kind of a general help for me. Okay, enough babbling. We got the model in place. We found something we liked, or at least that makes me laugh. And really, that's all that's important to me. All right, let's make a container. Now, in this case, you may want to model the halves separately first, but I'm going to tell you now, it's probably a little more effective if you make your initial sketches both for the profile of the box and the hinge. Doesn't have to be first. You can always come back to the hinge later. The profile for the box, make that on the main component, then create the actual side, so the extrusions from those sketches on new components. So the extrusions lead to bodies. Those should be on individual components. The sketches should be shared, and that's exactly why they're outside of individual components. So let's go ahead and make those. Start by, and remember to deselect the activate box there. I'll just start by lid, make another one. And if you leave the activate checkbox checked, it's fine. You just need to make sure that you go back and reactivate the whole project. Otherwise, you'll be nesting components. And bottom. Okay, cool. There we go. So I just have they're empty components right now. We're good. All right. I still have the whole project open, or the whole project active. Let's create a sketch. Same profile. There we are. I have basically now I have my reference points. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to make this a rectangular box. Nothing fancy, just pretty straightforward. Right to there. And frankly, I could go right to the original bounding box that I already made. Cool. Might as well. Why not? That's kind of why I made it there. All right. Hit escape. I do have now an actual container size, or an actual sketch that is outside of those initial sketches. Does not hurt to label those. But for now, we're just going to leave that there. Great. All right, now I need to establish how thick do I want this? Because when you're building something, a container that has to fit an object, you're kind of working backwards. Ordinarily, I want to make a box, make it out of wood, whatever. I'm on the table saw, bandsaw, yada yada yada. I would start. All right, I want it so many by so many, so many millimeters, so many inches by so many millimeters, so many inches, and then I make it so high. Then I'm going to cut the inside. Opposite way. In this case, I'm going to start with the internal dimensions and work outward. And really, just like with your building out of wood, how thick is your material? Is it an inch thick, half-inch thick? In this case, 5 millimeters. That's what I'm choosing now. So I could make an additional box, an additional rectangle. But again, why bother? I already have initially how big I want. I'll use the offset tool, select that sketch, and I'll decide how thick I want the walls. 3 millimeters is really plenty. So because it's going outside, it's going larger. In this case, it wants me to use a negative. So -3 outside. Cool. There we go. All right. That's pretty much it. Now, if you want, I could have added fillets to this, such like that, and it really wouldn't have been a bad idea. Sometimes, as we've discussed, sometimes you add fillets to the outside and it throws a bunch of stuff off. And we'll make that a heck of a lot smaller. Let's try just a 3 millimeter. Sure. Don't hit enter and keep selecting around. Cool. Made my fillets. All right, they're all 3 millimeters. Now they're all linked because I did not hit enter. If I wanted to, I could change that. You know what? I think 5 would have been better. Changes them all to 5. Pretty slick. Now you can go ahead and do that on the inside too, or you can do this afterwards. In this case, might as well, since we're here. Let's go ahead and make those changes right now. That is way too much. 9, 3. Honestly, if you had done this, if you'd made these fillets before you did the offset, it'd be a lot easier and they'd all be linked, but I didn't. So we're going to go with this. All right, that works. Stuff's rounded, you're going to get a warning because you just changed constraints. It's fine. Doesn't matter. Okay, finished sketch. That's it. I just made that's pretty much going to be the box. That's really about it. All right. Now I have that sketch in place. This is outside of any of the container components. It will be very helpful if you label also your sketches. So either right click to rename or slow click, and we'll just go box dims for dimensions. Cool, there we go. Label anything you can. All right. Now would be where I would want to activate a component. Everything kind of ghosts out. That's okay. And I'm going to use extrude. Now, in this case, you have a couple of options. You can extrude up, or in this case, it's going to be the bottom. So I definitely want to extrude downward. Now, since I have this wall here, that works. Problem is I create this shell really, and I don't have an actual like container. Or rather, I don't have a bottom. So realistically, what I needed to have done was select both the inside and the outside, or the internal and that wall. Select down, make sure it's thick enough to where it goes down to the frog and below. A little difficult since it's clear, or since it's opaque. There we go. That works. The other option is, well, we'll leave it at there. Sketch hides, unhide the sketch again. Now I can do a second extrude, select that internal. Now, oops, I accidentally hit sketch instead of, I don't know how I do that sometimes. I meant to select extrude. So you can drag this down and you see now it just cuts the internal away. The other thing you could do is, like we've done before, you can do this kind of manually, or if you want, you can go to start profile plane. Yep, that's right. Extend type, instead of distance, where you either dragging or adding it numerically, go to object, select the bottom of the box. Now that's going to automatically cut all the way through, but then I use the offset to step back a bit. There's the walls are 3 millimeters. Now I'll go say -3 millimeters. So it steps back from the bottom 3 millimeters. Okay. So now the bottom of that container, no matter what I do to the sides, so if I change the extrusion height, say I all of a sudden want this to be a lot deeper or shallower, whatever, the bottom will remain 3 millimeters away from the outside of that edge. It's a really convenient way of working. All right, that's the bottom of the box right there. That's really all you need. If you want, you can go and add fillets and things like that. Select the whole bottom. And we'll do like, I don't know, maybe a 2 millimeter fillet. Make it kind of fancy, roundy, all that kind of thing. That's all. You can also do that later. That's all right. Okay, let's make the lid. Change components. Activate the lid component. Sketch is still there. I'm going to show you the other way that you can make these sides here. Again, go to extrude. I'm going to select top and bottom, and I'm going to drag this up so that it goes above the top of my model and a little bit more. So it was 15 right at the top, and let's make it like, I don't know, 18, 20, make it around 20. That's fine. One other thing, as we haven't played with yet, you can add a taper to this. So you can make this go in and out. Doesn't really make sense to go outward, but you can go inward, or if maybe on the bottom, maybe you're trying to make this like a triangle or something. It's a neat option. Positive numbers go outward. So 5, you can see it goes outward. Negative numbers go inward. So you can make this a tapered lid. It's a neat feature. That's really all. In this case, it's really convenient if you're making an object that will be molded and yada, yada, yada. It needs like an angle. So, but this is a way where you could just make like kind of like a built-in neat little feature. Cool. All right. New body. Make sure it's new body. Should be, because I'm on a separate component. There we go. Doop, 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 doop. For some reason, calculating. Cool. All right. Now let me hide the bottom. Now before, and in this case, I would have used an extrude, and I would need it. And since I had that taper there, I would have had to remember, or just write down 5. That I needed to make sure that this next extrusion also had that -5 millimeter, or that -5 degree taper. Or I can use one of the other tools. The shell tool, as it shows here, removes material away from a part interior, creates a hollow cavity based on a face you select. Select that tool, select the inside face of what will be my lid. And I want to maintain the same wall thickness, 3 millimeters. Boom. it automatically hollows out the inside, including from away from the top. So from this face, it now removes everything until it gets to 3 millimeters away from all sides. Cool thing is see how it also has this, you already have the fillet on this outside. That also includes the fillet as a taper on the inside. So it's a neat feature. It's a neat tool that works really well. I encourage you to play around with that one. That is a really cool tool to play with. Select OK. All right. Unhide the top and bottom. Reactivate everything. I've got the container. My missile toad now has a safe little container for the most part. So let's save there. Top and bottom, if I can spell those. Done. All right, cool. That's really it. That's pretty much it. That will mostly contain it. It'll probably rattle around in there, but that's close enough. I will show you how to make like more of a form-fitted thing, but for right now, we'll just stick with this part. We'll make it We'll make it complex enough. All right, there we are. The next part is making the hinge, and you can't have it as you cannot join it with a joint tool until you have the place will move from, or at least in this case, where it's going to joint from. So this is why I was saying it's important to have sketches outside of your other components, the lid and the bottom, because in the same way that we created the sketch that will make the top and bottom outside, we're going to do the same thing for the hinge. Let me go to the right or left. It could be either one. Doesn't really matter. And I'm going to create a new sketch. And if you have trouble again seeing stuff, hide stuff, I'm going to hide the frog or the toad. Sorry, that's a distinction entirely. And in this case, I want to make sure to use the, XZ plane, which is the left and right. Or in this case, oh, never mind. I made it left and right. So in this case, it's the front to the back. My bad. Okay, same diff, doesn't really matter. Let me unhide the lid. Now, I'm going to make something that is a basic, like this one, just this really simple hinge. All that is a circle and a couple of triangles going in opposite directions. So to start, you do want to have an estimate of how big a hardware you want to use. Now, in this case, this isn't very tall. This is only like, what was it, like 50 millimeters tall. So, all right. Realistically, something like a 3 or 4 millimeter bolt will work. And that's one of the reasons why we're also using metric. It's so much easier to remember 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. So we're going to use a 4. In this case, I think just ballpark, I'm going to use a 4 millimeter bolt. So that means the inside circle I'm going to be needing will be 4 millimeters. That's all. Okay. So somewhere out here, or you can start directly on, doesn't really matter. I'm going to create a circle that will have a 4 millimeter hole in it. So if you want to just create a circle out here floating around, that's fine. Or if you want to start it on the or attached to here, cool. But one of the things you can do to start with is sometimes these get to be a little confusing to have these other components all floating around here, but I still need the sides for that. So what you can do, let's start with the circle. I do want a 2-point circle. So I'm going to start right here in the middle. And this is why I was saying it's important to build stuff at the origin point, at the origin lines. This just makes everything so much easier building this stuff out. When you get more complex and more familiar with the program, you could kind of go more nuts. This makes it so much easier. Start right there, draw out. All right, I know I want 4 millimeters in the center, so it obviously has to be bigger than that. If we're going to print these, it should probably be a fair bit larger. So let's double it. Let's say 8. Okay, cool. There we go. That works. Now, be careful that this isn't going up and down. You just want this to snap right there. Cool. All right. Now, again, I could use an offset, but in this case, I want to start with something that's actually the size I need. So I'm going to use a center diameter circle right in the center, 4. Okay, there we go. So this will end up being that hollow space. Then I'm going to put hardware straight through. But I need to also create what will be these little ears. Now, the easiest way is I can just draw back and forth on here, but that's not going to let me have a closed sketch. So what you can use is called the project tool. You can just press P on your keyboard, or you go down here, project include, project. And project tool, it works in different ways. There's a couple different ways, but essentially think of projections, literally what you're looking at, a projection across a screen. Now, it makes sense. It doesn't make as much sense because this is flat, Y'all can't see it on the screen on the on the camera, but think of adding like a rounded object in front of a screen. It turns that projected light, makes it flattened, and you can just see this straight edge that's creating against the screen there. Anything rounded on a flat surface creates that edge. So with the project tool, I can select either the whole thing if I needed like the whole edge here, or really, or this whole face. I just need the edge. Let's select that, select that. Am I getting it? Yeah, turn blue. It's hard to see sometimes. There we go. Super good. Just needed that. Select OK. What the hell did I just do? When I hide these two objects, I'm left with this purple line. That is a remnant. That is a projection line of the profile of that container. Now, if that were like a rounded container, way more difficult to find the edge of a rounded object. But if you're looking straight on, the rounded side is just where you are looking currently, that edge. That's how the projection works. So now I have a straight line to work from. And now I can just draw a couple lines from like here, I don't know, somewhere there-ish. It's not really important right now. You can always make this really more detailed. It's fine. In this case, I don't know, sure, 15. Let's make it an even number. There we go. That connects. But I want to make sure that this is a tangent. Select my tangent constraint. Select the line. Circle. Snaps over. Problem is, see, that makes it float. So sometimes the constraints kind of go a little screwy for you. So I wouldn't draw it as too detailed. I would just start somewhere. Snap it up there somewhere. That works. Does make it a little bit more effective if it is a tangent to the line, but now since I didn't make the line defined length, it kind of stayed where it was. So that's cool. I'm gonna do the same over here, somewhere down here. It can be all the way to the bottom if you want. Now, if I'm starting as I move up, you can see the tangent constraint symbol comes up when I actually get to that point. Cool, that works. Now, because I have these purple projection lines, now that sketch shows up as a closed sketch object. Really convenient way to work. All right, that's it. That's really all I need. Finish sketch. Make sure to label it. And let's see here. Hinge profile or purple. What's that?
That one sketch. Like.
Oh, yes, that is a single sketch. So my entire hinge, what will become the shared, what will become the barrel and the two ears are currently one flat sketch, one shared sketch. That's all you need. You can make this more complex, but yes, thank you for asking. That is a solid or a single sketch. And I'm going to get both sides out of that from this one shared sketch. All right. So I'll unhide the lid, unhide the bottom. Makes it a little bit harder to see sometimes, but there we go. So start with whichever. In this model, it has the two ears for the top. Or it has the top has two ears, the bottom has one wider ear. That works. You can go the opposite way. It doesn't really matter in this case. Okay. Now, I'm going to create these through extrusions. To do that, though, I need to make sure that I'm activating the appropriate component, or rather the component I want to create the part for. So let's start with the bottom. In this case, I'm going to go the opposite way. We'll go lid, just to be different. Activating the lid, ka-chunk. So everything ghosts out, but that hinge profile sketch is outside of the component. That's the trick to this. Otherwise, you could have the sketch on a separate component, but it can kind of cause some problems. So it's so much easier to have it outside of your shared components, or the shared sketch outside of the single component. Blah. Anyway, let's go to extrude. I want to select, obviously, my shared circle, not the inside, so it creates a cylinder right off. And I want to select the upper ear, because that's the one I'm starting with. And I can just drag this out. And you see how it automatically, for one, comes out the same color. The operation at the bottom here of my toolbox switches automatically to join. So when I hit OK, it's going to link itself to the top, and bam, instant hinge. However, I want this to be centered. So we go back up to the toolbox. Start is at the start plane. I want to change the direction to symmetric. And now you have an option of either measurement is half. So before it was a 9 millimeters on one side. So now it's going to make 9 and 9. So it's 18 millimeters wide. The 9 was just where I drug it to. I would recommend switching to whole length. Now it's going to be centered. So really each side is 3.5 and 3.5 millimeters. So let's make that a little bit easier because that's confusing. No, not 3.5, 4.5. Way to go, math brain. 10. So 5 millimeters each, doesn't matter. It's 10 millimeters wide all around. Great, awesome. It's going to automatically join. Bam. There's the first ear. That's it. Now, change over, activate the bottom component. See how the top ghosts out? Great. Now, this part, you have to make 2 extrusions. You have to make the two ears separate. So select extrude. Sometimes it's hard to get at, also because it automatically hid that part. So sometimes it's hard to get at. If you can't manage to select that, just temporarily hide the component you don't need. Now you can see the object there, or the sketch a little bit easier. Select there, and now the bottom ear. Now you do have to unhide the part for this part, because whereas so far we've been using the start is at the profile plane. I want to select object. So whereas before we've used the offset to object as a place to stop, in this case, I'm going to use it as a place to start. So I'm going to select one side or the other of this ear, of this little face. Select there. Now, when I start extruding, it's going to start over there. Really convenient. I'm going to keep these as kind of like whole general numbers, so I'll just leave that as 5. Operation, join. Now, because I have the bottom component active, it's only going to join to that component. It's not going to join to that other component. It is currently, even though I can see it, and normally Fusion will react with anything it is still visible. If it's not active and it's just ghosted, it won't join to that. So great. Select OK. There we go. Hide that. I've got 1 ear. Okay. Now I need to do it again. Bottom component is still active. Hit extrude. Do the same. Let me orbit over. Again, if it's hard to get at, you can hide stuff. Select the cylinder. Select the ear. Start to object. Now select the other face of the ear and go the other direction. In this case, it's going to be negative. So -5. Join. Super good. There we go. That's it. So that is how you can create very quickly an ear or 2 ears for a simple hinge. Now, one of the requirements is you do still need to add some features to this. It could be text, all that kind of stuff, but we'll go deal with that in a minute. Now, one of the things I did want to show you real quick is on this one, I added like this little thumb tab and such. This is a simple little fix I can add to this. Let me save this real quick. Hinge made. So let me activate just the lid. And with this, what I could do is edit a sketch, make sure that in this case, I can select the start plane, or if I'm having trouble selecting that, I can just select this bottom face here. That works too. In this case, I do an orbit. Now we'll leave it at the bottom. And just to create that little tab, I'm going to make a little circle right there at the edge. And boop, 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 something like that. Sure, 5. Great. Finish sketch. In this case, now I'm going to extrude. If I just extrude that front edge, because it automatically separates, I'll go up like 2 millimeters. If I select just that front edge, because this is at a taper, you can see that it's making this little hollow in there. That's no good. So just make sure you select both of them. It will try to cut. So nope, join. I want that. There we go. Okay. But I did really like that little recess there. It's a neat little feature. So what I'm going to do now, do one more extrusion. I'm going to select that sketch hid. So I'm going to select that sketch again. Oops, nope. That's not what I want. I want that one, just that. There we go. And I can extrude upward, but once again, I want to select from object. So it's starting right there. And now when I drag up, it's going to automatically cut, and you can see what it's doing there. Just makes a chop out. Yeah, it's just a neat little way to make a feature. Extent, if I go to object and select the top, it's going to stop right there at the top. Great. And if you wanted, you can even add another taper to it. I don't know, let's say 5 degrees outward. Yeah, sure. Makes it kind of a little bit bigger, a little bit fancier. There you go. So it's just a simple way to make like a little thumb tab if you wanted to do something like that. Okay. Added some features a little bit. You can always come back, obviously add like fillets, round over these edges, that sort. It's not a requirement, but it certainly makes your little container a little bit nicer. And just for grins, I will unhide my mistletoe. But that's not really important right now. It just makes me laugh. All right, let's hide these sketches and clean up what I'm trying to work with. So the next part is bringing in your hardware. So far, real simple, just a couple of simple extrusions based around some relative sketches, and you can round them out, make them nice whole numbers, nothing important there. The next part is bringing in your hardware. Now, I showed you under insert how to import and insert a mesh. Now I want to insert McMaster-Carr components. And this is straight off of the website. If you open their website, McMaster-Carr.com, you'll see the exact same thing. Oops, I thought that was for, sorry, I thought that close thing was for the little pop-up. It was not. Okay, the reason I'm opening this up is I want to get some hardware. You can use whatever you want in here. It really doesn't matter, but for the most part, we're going to use things like thread. In this case, I'm going to use a threaded rod and some nuts. So I'm going to go to threaded rod. Now, the good thing is like I said, we're using metric sizes. Since I made that a 4mm hole, I can go to metric and I can go to an M4 threaded rod because it's going to be 4mm wide. That's really why. I don't have to go remembering. I don't have to remember fractions or anything like that. What you end up ultimately choosing doesn't matter. It's just more of that. If you were to build this, print this, or actually go to print this, and you wanted to add hardware, this is how you could select exactly the hardware you actually wanted to use. All right. So pitch doesn't really matter. Yada 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 yada. But because we used whole numbers for here, that center was 10mm, and then each ear was 5, so something over 20mm. So in this case, 24, 25, a little bit longer than 20 because it needs to stick out a little bit more. We'll go there. That's fine. I don't know why it's bringing that up. What's going on here? Those are supposed to be threaded rods, and it's bringing up couplings. Well, that's not at all what I want. Fine. Clear it all. Weird. Thread type. Yeah, that was odd. I don't know why it had that. 25? Oh, there we go. I don't know why I brought that up. Doesn't matter. All right. You know what? Just for grins, we'll say stainless steel because fancy. So the cool thing is with this, you can select, if you were like selecting this actual object, holy mackerel, stainless steel thing of 4mm, only 25mm long, is $8 or almost $9. Okay, so maybe you won't actually be buying these. Whatever. Damn inflation. But you select the actual object, and the important thing is anything on, or most anything on this website. So even if you're getting like, you're building like a rolling tool cart, and I say that because that's what I used to build one, I can find the model for the casters they had and the hardware I wanted to use, import those into the model, into my Fusion project, and use those exact ones. You go to product detail, you have this little drop down, go down. Now this is important. Don't select the SolidWorks one, select step. Easy way to remember. The next step is selecting a step. Or at least that's, I like things to help me remind myself like that. Go to download. Give it a second as it thinks, or actually click it. And it will import a new object as a new component entirely. Now, you don't have to move, you don't have to put this in place to make it work, but it does help to, it does help to orient it. So let me just drag it outside of my model. And I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. I said 90, dang it. There we go. Doesn't have to be smack in the middle. That's okay. And I'm going to have this same option. It pops up again, the capture position or revert, just because it's got a new set of coordinates for itself. You've got a little checkbox at the bottom. If you want, you can use that. Boop, there we go. All right, that'll work. Super freaking duper. Next part, I'm going to put some end caps on that. So let's go back to McMaster-Carr. Once again, I want to use some fancy nuts. Metric, M4 once again. And let's see if they have some snazzy like acorn nuts. I like using those just because they look pretty. I'm not seeing anything. So fine, we'll just use something boring, whatever. Good Lord, there's a lot of stuff in here. Yeah, stainless steel for why not? Because there we go. Easy peasy. Find something that you like. Doesn't matter. I don't expect you're ordering 100 of these, but it's the same process. Find the actual product name. It will save your selection. So from now on, you shouldn't have to change it to step. It should save it as a step model. Go to download, plop. It'll bring it in, move it kind of sort of where you want. Now, and again, you do want to orient it roughly into the position you want it to be. So I'm going to turn this 90 degrees in along the x-axis. So that way it's at least kind of sort of oriented. Hit OK. Cool. All right. Now I will need a second one. So I don't have to do that all over again. I can just select that component. Control C, Control V, capture position. There we go. So that's just going to plop it in the new spot. I'm just going to drag a second one, sort of kind of over there. Cool. All right. So now I have my threaded rod, the nuts that are going to go on, and the place it's going to go. Let's save it there. Hardware, hardware, imported. All right. Let's make this guy. Let's make this move. All right. Last steps in this is the joint. Now, use the assemble drop down. It's the same default one that's already up there. Select joint. Creates a moving thing between two components. Now you have a bunch of options here. For the most part, we're not going to use any other ones, but usually the simple one is the easiest way. Now there's something important to remember here. You have two selections, just like a lot of things, how any of these toolboxes pop up, you have interactions. You have the thing that interacts and the thing it interacts with. The first thing you select is what will move. The second thing you select is where it will move to, or rather where it'll move around. So what that means, I need to select the lid, the lid component part of the joint first, the base component second. Now the trick to this is you need to select where it's actually moving to. Now you see when I mouse over this thing, you've got this little cursor here that has two concentric circles and a green and a red line. That's denoting the center of movement. And anytime I try to get it on, put it on a face, you've got all these little points come up. Don't worry about those. We want to put this smack in the middle of that cylinder, floating in the middle of the cylinder. So the easiest way to do this is I'm going to collapse this. I'm going to hide the bottom. So I just have less to deal with. Go away, mistletoe, for a moment. And I want this to actually be floating in the center in here. You see when I mouse over the cylinder, you see how it tries to create something right there floating in the middle of space, but against this face here. Cool, that works. Or I have these 2 points at either end, and then I have that little triangle floating in the center. The triangle is always the symbol for middle. So if you're having trouble with that, sometimes it's a little bit easier to zoom in, but you see as I try to get there, it disappears. Mildly frustrating. So in this case, ideally, you should try to put it right there in the middle of that triangle, but it's kind of being a jerk ass right now. So we can do the same thing here by working right on the edge here. Basically, in this case, it'll do the same thing. So if you want to get it in the center there, it will work. It's usually easy to do, but in this case, it is fighting me. Usually the way to work is if you're having this snap issue and it's not wanting to snap there, see how it keeps changing things around? What you can do is if you mouse over the area you want it to be relative to, so like if I wanted to try to capture right there in the center, floating in space, the selection option has gotten a lot better, so it actually snaps over. But if you're having trouble with that, mouse over the face you want to use, press and hold Control, or if you're on Mac, Command, and it locks your selection to that relative space. So now it'll only snap right there, but it will also work along a vertical plane like the cylinder. If I'm mousing over, not at the point, but just somewhere, just generally in that cylinder, press and hold Control. Now it's not letting me select anywhere else. And now I can much more easily get right there in the center. There we go. Made the selection. Object ghosts out, unhide there. Now I want to do the same thing because I want my joint to be in the same spot. Same deal here. It's going to be a nightmare trying to select that. So what I can do, let me hide the lid. See, it's not even letting me select that little spot there. If I mouse inside of the cylinder, press and hold Control, it's still not doing it. All right, you jerk. Let's see here. It's still not letting me do it. It's only letting me select right there. All right, then I'll have to use the other thing. All right, so there is one other option here. The slightly more involved option is between two faces, and that just is exactly here. I'm trying to select right in the middle between these two spots. Change my selection point to between two faces. I just need to select the two faces. Select that one. Select that one. And now my snap point should float in there. So it should. Still fighting me. Come on. There we go. So now, excuse me, it's going to put this point right here in the middle somewhere, but I want it to be in the middle of this cylinder area. Now I can select in there. Remember, press and hold Control. There we go. So it's going to snap it right there. So now I unhide the lid, stand put, sorry. Now it's not going anywhere right now because you have two tabs on the joint tool. You have position, which is where you're trying to select, and motion. Right now it's rigid. That'd be like gluing the two things together. So if I hit motion preview, it's going to shake around and give me anxiety. So please stop. The one we're going for is revolute, rotate. Moving around that point. That's it. That's what I want. Now, right now, it's going to do all kinds of weird stuff because we haven't put limits in yet. But it's doing what we want it to do. Okay. So now, and remember, I didn't have either of those components selected. I just had the main thing selected. So now I have a new drop down here, joints. How to edit your joints. Go over, mouse over to the little download arrow. You can either left click or right click. It doesn't matter. It's going to bring up the toolbox anyway. Same thing. You got your limits here. I want to add limits. Select the toolbox or select the two boxes. You can either do this manually or with the little flags. Want to go the opposite direction? Yeah, if I just want to do like 140, that's fine. Oh, it set both. It does that. There we go. Set to 0. So now when I go to anim, oh, come on. No, stop. No. Hate when it does it. I grabbed the wrong flag. Yes, select them both. All right. I don't know. 180. There we go. Why is it doing both? What? No. I want you to close. Ugh. I swear sometimes this drives me crazy. Now, obviously, I got it right this time. Yeah. But it's going backwards. Minor problem. Just hit that's why it has this flip option. Hit flip. There you go. Now it's going the other 180 degrees. So the issue was that for some reason the how the joint was placed, it was somehow reversed. Don't worry about it. Main thing is we got it going right. It's still do 180 degrees. There we go. That's really what we need. Okay. Now the trick to this is one last thing on this. Like with this model, you should be able to open and close it like that. Problem is, you do that, it's going to drag the whole thing everywhere because you need to ground one of the parts. Let me Control Z and plop that back in place. All you need to do for that, whatever's going to be the bottom, your component, just right click on it somewhere. And the toolbox that pops up, the second option, ground, literally do that. A little pin symbol comes up, little clothespin. Now it'll work. So you got to ground one of the things. Okay. Joint added. How to place these parts? Real simple. We can use the joint tool to snap those in place too. So use the joint. In this case, excuse me. Remember, what you select first is what will move. What you select second is where it will move to. I need to select right there in the center again. Oh, threaded things give me, it's a real pain. So again, I can select here on this face, press and hold control. Should be able to select somewhere in the center, and it's not letting me because you're being a jerk ass. Yeah, threaded things, you can get there, but it's sometimes just a real pain. So this is where that whole two-face thing comes in really handy. So I'll select one face. Ooh, face. Sorry. And then my snap point is just somewhere in between there. So you can see now as I zoom in, now it shows up. Now it shows up. There we go. So see how it automatically connected right in the center there. Now I just need to select over here. I need to hide like the bottom again. That's fine. I'm going to put this right exactly in the same spot as my other joints, but this is a rigid joint, so I don't need to worry about it. If I'm having trouble selecting again, remember just mousing somewhere inside the cylinder, press and hold control, pop, and it flies in. Now motion, currently it's rotating. I don't need that. I'll switch back to rigid. So that just kind of like glues it in place. The other one's a lot easier to deal with. I'm going to plop these end caps in. Same thing, joint. Now with this one, I can do it much more simply. I'm going to select right here in the floating in the center. So select on the face, press and hold control. That's how I can get to that little point. Now I selected the first one. What will move to where it will move. I'll just put it some like on this face here. Same deal. That'll fly in. Plink. And it put it on the outside for some reason. So, well, it's going to be all jiggly because it's not moving. But if you need to move something, you can always rotate stuff. You can do that with the edit. Sorry, my brain's starting to short out at this point. But select OK. It's attached there. Do the same thing with the last one. What will move? On the face, press and hold control, snap there. Same thing over here. Boop. I don't know why it's rotating. That is frustrating. If you need to, you can also just literally drag it. That works. Moved it 3 millimeters. Too far. Really, I don't care if it's like not snapped exactly in place. I just want it to be like kind of put where it needs to be. But there you go. That's it. So that got moved. That one I probably should change a little bit. So I'll edit that joint. And all I'm doing is just literally moving it in a little bit. So it's still relative. Doesn't matter. It's just gluing it in place. That rigid joint just glues it in place. And there you go. So I now have a joint that acts as my hinge. I'll unhide my towed missile because that's nice and hiding in there. Boop. That works. Everything functions. That's pretty much it. So the container is very simple. It's just a basic box. You can make this round if you want. Round, you'll still get the same effect of using the project line when you are using the project tool to create that edge line. You just might have like a big wonky hinge sticking off of it, but it'll work just fine. We're just basically creating like a clamshell here. So the top and bottom, just a couple of extrusions. You can use Extrude to hollow it out. Excuse me. You can use Extrude to hollow it out, or you can use the shell tool. Same diff, same result. Shell is a bit more convenient. You're just making these simple hinge. If you want to add more ears to the hinge, go for it. It doesn't really matter the hardware. You can pick whatever you want, just that we're importing that. And again, your object can be something like something if you want to model yourself. You can import a model. It can be a really simple representation of your model, whatever works for you. But hopefully it goes smoothly for you. You can add little features. And like I said, we did want to add a couple little feature into here. That was one last detail for the project. Well, my towed missile, I don't want my little toad frog friend to suffocate. So I'm going to make a sketch right there on the top. We'll make a little circle right there. And we'll be 3 millimeters. So we'll make it a little bit bigger. 4, whatever, doesn't matter. And I'll use the rectangle pattern tool to make more of that. I don't know. We'll make more of them. 2 directions. There we go. Just adding some more holes. Oh God, I mean, so many, way too many. I don't know, whatever. There you go. And then I can just extrude all of those sketch holes straight on through. Oops, that is not what I wanted. Let's make a selection box. Cool, went through. Direction, extent type, to object. And we'll select the inside because I'm lazy and don't want to measure. There we go. My little toad missile has breathing holes. So it can be as simple as that. That's fine. Done. Okay. Everybody's brain fried? Good. All right. So good luck with it. Obviously, we're going to work with this. We're going to work on this. But do your best and we'll work on it more.